Today we are going to make a manga together. I have this script right here and I'll show you how I'm making a manga out of it step by step. And more importantly, I will show you which mistakes you definitely need to stop doing. Hi, you guys know the drill, my name's Marcel. And if you want to make your own comic or manga, you usually start out with your story that you have prepared for your manga. Then you make a storyboard out of this, meaning you plan all the panels, where they go, how big they are, etc, etc. And then you use this storyboard as a blueprint to draw a finished manga page. I have done this lots of times by now. Receiving a text from my story writer, making a storyboard out of it, drawing the page, and so on. I've done this for 6 years straight. I've made a whole manga series by now that you could check out on my website, just saying. I've made a video on how to draw your own manga pages, uploaded a video on how to storyboard, but today I will walk you through the process on how you can turn your story into a storyboard, into a manga. Okay, then let's turn this wall of text into manga. Like a sir. Here's a text that my story writer provided me with back in the day. It's the original script for chapter 18 of my manga series Myth. And I'm going to show you how I made this story into a manga page. Step by step. Okay, this is what is going to happen on these manga pages. You have a couple of characters present. This is the closing scene after a big fight. You have Cyrus, who's just sitting by a grave, his friend Kruger, as well as our main characters, Arizona and Pat. Don't worry, you don't need to remember the names for this. After all, you guys are pretty bad with names anyway. This scene basically only consists of the characters talking about this magic flask, Pep and Arizona taking off, followed by a big reveal. The locations are also very simple, mostly just trees, a wooden hut, and a grave. And that's it. Let's turn this little story into a storyboard. It should be simple enough. I am aiming for a maximum of 3 pages here because there are also lots of other things that happen in this chapter, so I don't have a lot of space for it. But 3 pages is still reasonable. So this is actually a very realistic limitation that could happen in your manga or comic as well. So let's start storyboarding then. You have the first panel, which is a shocked reaction of Pep, who's turning around. Alright, easy enough. And I'm going to have him turn to the left side, because that is going to be very helpful for the page flow, because having him look to the right, well, I guess that's self-explanatory why that's not a good idea. So, okay, keep in mind, I want the last page to be a big reveal that I mentioned before, so I only have 2 pages left for all of this. So we need to save some space. Let's cram multiple dialogue bubbles into one panel. In these cases, I'm always making sure it's obvious who is talking, and that's why I'm adding some little chibi faces in these bubbles. In these situations, I think it's always very helpful to depict the actual thing that the characters are talking about. They are talking about this magic flask here, so why not just show it in this panel? And this works out nicely flow-wise because we already have a character looking directly at it, composition-wise at least. The next speech balloons are a real downer, so we're switching from a happy to a sad panel, with Cyrus interrupting them, still looking at this gravestone. In this case, I think it's very helpful to have a close-up of the character's face to really show their expressions. So I'm making a big panel for that, because you really want to show how the mood changes. Since we want to convey that he's very focused and isn't taking his eyes off the grave, adding bags under his eyes or veins into the eyes would be very helpful. You know, that way he's looking like he's actually very focused and got dry eyes from not blinking or something. So I'm adding this idea to my storyboard in a very obvious way so that I'm not forgetting it later on. Now here's an important part. Because if you just moved on to the next dialogue, it feels like this sad part would just be ignored and everyone just pretends like they didn't hear it. To really hammer home how everyone's reading the room here, I'm adding some reaction shots. You know, to show that this actually affects the people who are present. I also don't think there's any words necessary here. I think in this case you just gotta put some faith into your reader that they're understanding the situation here. Also, no background, just pure focus on the expressions here. I'm also putting Pep and Arizona in very similar looking panels right on top of each other, just to show how these reactions are basically happening simultaneously. Additionally, I'm going to lightly shade these characters later on. That's why I'm scribbling some markings on them so that I don't forget this while I'm working on the page later on. When they are shaded this way, they are highlighted from the blank background. This really puts more emphasis on the characters themselves. And well, the last panel's just some more dialogue. I angled this panel a bit more because this way I have some more space for the speech balloon. At this point you may have wondered, why is there so much space left on that one side? And that's actually pretty easy, because if your manga is getting printed, this part of the page is not going to be visible anymore. So don't plan any of these panels on the inner side. Okay, that's one storyboard page done. As you've noticed, I'm drawing very small so that I always keep the overview and I can quickly change stuff. And that happens a lot with storyboarding. So for storyboards, I always use a mechanical pencil because it's so thin and you can draw very tiny with it. And I use an eraser pen because it's so precise with erasing. And in case you're curious about which pencils or which art supplies I use, they are always linked on my website in my art supply list. So yeah, just check that art supply list out in case you have any questions. Here's a part where Arizona summons her wings and they are taking off. And here's a very big trap that a lot of beginners fall into by just, well, depicting one action, one after another, step by step. And yeah, that's obviously not a very good way to depict this scene. Don't get me wrong, you can show off your character's superpowers in dramatic moments. I've also done that a lot in my manga already. Okay, in order to make you guys understand this better, I'll show you my favorite example, which is Goku's Kamehameha. At the beginning of the Dragon Ball series, you still had these moments where he went the full 9 yards with the Kamehameha. Even the author got the memo that this got really old after the 20th time. That's why in later fights, Goku literally just goes whoop, boom. So that's what I'm doing here. It's also just adding a small panel with feathers appearing, and in the next panel, she stands there with her wings already summoned. Again, your viewer is going to understand this, they are not mentally challenged. Unlike some of my viewers. If you have already showed your reader something a couple of times, like wings being summoned, they can fill in the blanks in their head on their own on what's happening here. Don't insult their intelligence by showing them the same thing over and over and over again. So this saves a lot of space, it moves the story along a bit quicker, and it's a breath of fresh air. Now, as you can see, we only have like half a page left to show that they're taking off, flying into the sunset, the character turning around, and then the big reveal. So just like before, we are using the power of implication. Again, my readers have seen Arizona fly off a million times by now, and she's not the focus of the scene here. So let's just have a small gust of wind in this small little panel and the characters flying away. Again, I think everyone with more than half a brain cell here can connect the dots on what's happened here. And if you think that what has happened here is still a bit ambiguous, there are still sound effects like whoosh that you could add in order to hammer home that there's a wind blowing. You can add these sound effects in English or in Japanese, whatever you prefer. I just prefer drawing them in Japanese because it's a manga.
But I don't speak Japanese. How do I?
I've made a video on manga effects and manga sound effects. Just check that one out. Not opening that kind of worms here. Okay, no, the rest of the storyboard page leaves enough space for the remaining dialogue. Now, I'm not showing Cyrus's face yet. I'm keeping it for the big review. So my strategy in this case would be just to hint at his expression and then show his face along with the big reveal in the next page turn. A page turn is always very powerful and very important and very dramatic. So I think this works out great. Okay, this is the way that I approached this little scene back in the day, pretty much exactly the way that we did right now. Now, before I turn the storyboard into actual manga pages, I would appreciate if you guys liked this video first. I have no idea if you guys like seeing me storyboard like this, so I would appreciate your support in order to show me that you want to see more of this. After drawing the storyboard, you can go ahead and make your manga pages exactly the way that you've planned it in your storyboard. Now, this whole chapter is over 7 years old at the moment, so I apologize if the art in these 3 pages isn't going to be up to par with my latest drawings. These recordings are a bit older, but I think for the time it's actually kinda decent. As always, for my manga pages, I use manuscript paper. That's because A, it has these borders that let me know where I can't draw, just like I showed you at the beginning of the video. And also because B, I ink my manga with pen and nibs. And you need some really good paper for that. Otherwise, it is going to bleed through. But don't worry, if you have a ruler at home and you ink with liners instead of pens and nibs, you could also just use regular printer paper, no problem. So what I always like to do first is to set the panel border. I don't measure them out perfectly, I just kinda go with my gut feeling here. And then, well, I get to start drawing. And then I get to ink with G pen and Madu pen. Again, videos about all of these kinds of things, like how to draw manga panels correctly and how to ink with pen and nibs and stuff, are already on my channel. Then I'm going to add screen tones to my manga pages to add all of these shadings and stuff. Well, and that's actually it when it comes to drawing and finishing the manga page. Next up, I scan the page, I boost up the contrast, and now I have the finished page ready. Now, if you want to know what to do after that, maybe you check out my video on how to publish your manga. Or if you want me to make a fight scene next, you're in luck, because I already made a video about how to make a fight scene. Both videos are on screen right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you support this video enough, I'll be sure to make another video on creating manga very soon.